I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye. Hey guys, it's your friendly neighborhood fat Spider-Man here, and I am not keeping this thing on. Good lord, how does Spider-Man do it? How does he breathe in that thing? It is... well, if you're watching this, it's Halloween, so happy Halloween. And I figured, why not try to do a different type of video here, where we look at a list of the 75 scariest horror movies according to today, and I'll also even throw out what I think is my scariest horror movie that I've seen in my life, because really with horror films, it takes a lot to scare me, so when they do, they're ones that I tend to remember forever. But there's one in particular that might even be on this list that I will definitely talk about. Hopefully I don't sweat like a dog because this thing is really tight, but you know, I mean, it's all one piece, so I can't really do anything else other than go through it. So without further ado, let's just get started. I'm not going to go through all 75. I'm just going to kind of go through the ones that I know and maybe ones that I want to comment on a little bit. So let's start out. Donnie Darko comes in first, and I don't necessarily know if I would call that a scary film. It's kind of got disturbing elements, but would you really even call it a horror film? I mean, it's almost like an A24 horror film, where it's not necessarily reliant on the horror aspect, more the thriller point of it. So Donnie Darko is kind of meh, I guess. Infinity Pool, that's an interesting one. This one just came out, and I mean, this thing is fucking insane. That's all I really have to say about it. Again, wouldn't necessarily call it scary, just mental. Now the Menu, one that came out last year, this has Ralph Fiennes and Anya Taylor-Joy in it. Yeah, again, it is definitely, it's more of a horror film to me, because this is dealing with like a cannibalistic chef. So I can see where the scary aspect comes in, because I think the idea of cannibalism is scary in itself. The fact that another human being is so willing to, you know, consume another human being is a little bit disturbing. Megan's just hilarious. Can we all agree on that? Like, it's not even scary, it's just fucking funny. Scream 6. I feel like it was scary the first time with Scream, but you know, over the years and the other movies that have come out after the first film, it kind of gets overdone, because every single movie it's the same thing. There's always some sort of copycat killer, or killers. In the case, it's mostly two killers a lot of the time, except for one occasion. So yeah, I don't really think they're scary anymore. It's definitely, I watch it more for the mystery aspect of like, okay, who's the killer this time? Because literally in these movies, it can be anybody within, you know, the friend group, or just someone that has popped up, and it's more interesting in that aspect than it is scary. X, I mean, I just watched it. It's more just weird because it acts as like a softcore porn, because, you know, the whole movie is about these people are going to this house that has like this farm they can stay on to shoot their adult films. So there's a lot of that in there. I guess, again, it's more of like a thriller type thing. There is a bit more gore in it than I think other horror films that kind of deal with stuff like this. It's more toward the end where you see all that, though. It's not, again, to me, necessarily a true horror. It's kind of one that just, you know, messes with your mind a little bit, and you're like, why are these people so fucked up? The original Halloween will forever be a scary movie. You know, it doesn't necessarily scare me anymore. Maybe when I was younger and would watch it, it would. But now, you know, when you look at it, it's such a classic, because when you look into Michael Myers' like eye holes, there's just nothing but black, and the fact that he's just going around killing people and not saying anything and heavy breathing, it's so disturbing in a way that, yeah, it would definitely be scary if you saw this in real life. And I just think with what it was able to do for its time, it definitely, you know, brought the slasher genre up, and for good reason. It is a classic that, even though has tried to be touched over the years, can never really be perfected as well as the first one did. The Exorcist is an interesting one, and I have an unpopular opinion on it, but I don't think it's really that great of a film. I mean, it's good, but it goes on for way too long, and I mean, there are some disturbing scenes to me, but at the end of it, it's just like, little girl gets possessed, and then we've seen it 100 times over. Like, possession movies don't even really scare me anymore. It's just kind of like, great, we're dealing with this again, and now they got to get the demons out and all that. So even though the original movie had some scary moments, I was never one that was like, this is one of the scariest movies ever made. It's just kind of like, okay. Now, the original Night of the Living Dead in 1968, the one that George Romero did, this one is a bit different because, first of all, it came out in 1968 and he decided to shoot it in black and white, which I think brings the eeriness factor up. But this was like the first like not original movie, but like the first like older film I remember where there was so much like blood and gore in it, something that back then you couldn't necessarily get away with as much. But George Romero just wanted to have his vision and bring it to life, and he definitely did that. And Night of the Living Dead, again, I'm not one to be, a fan of zombie movies, but this one is up there when we talk about like top tier classic horror films. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. This is another one where I think it's kind of weird because you think with a killer with a chainsaw you'd see a lot of blood, but you really don't. I mean, outside of, when he puts the girl on the meat hook, or, toward the end when you see all of like the people who are like kind of, been like chopped up and all this stuff, there's not really that much gore in this movie. I think, again, it just kind of plays off the disturbing factor of cannibalism. This is an inbred cannibalistic family, and this guy literally wears his victims' faces as masks. Like, that's just a disturbing part, and that's what makes it scary in the end in particular. So, I think, yeah, I definitely do agree with this. It is definitely a scary film that I would definitely recommend to a lot of people when they talk about what scary classic horror film should I watch. This is one of the first ones that I would go to. I mean, the original Evil Dead had to be on this list. I mean, when you talk about a movie that just had so much blood, guts, gore, it's this one. Bruce Campbell's amazing in it, and I feel like by the second and third movie it tends to get a little bit more goofy, as by Army of Darkness it just becomes more of a comedy than it does a horror in itself. But this one is like so like true to the horror genre, and I just love the way it was done. And again, I don't really think we'll ever see anything like it again, considering, like I said, where the trilogy ended up going by the end of it. It's like it started up here and it ended kind of like in a silly little way. But what I like about the third movie, when it gets a little silly, is that it's self-aware that it is. So it's not like, trying to pick up and continue to be the serious thing. It's actually quite nice when you can kind of shift a franchise into a different direction. But yeah, the original one, that's where it's at. A Nightmare on Elm Street. See, Freddy was never scary to me. He was always funny. It's kind of like Chucky. Everybody's like, oh, isn't that scary? And I'm like, not really, because the character's just fucking hilarious in itself. I think in the remake, the shitty Nightmare on Elm Street remake they made him a little bit more scarier and creepier and disturbing, because they kind of took all the fun elements away from him that Robert Englund was able to do. But with this version, the original version here by Wes Craven, and obviously, like I had mentioned before, Robert Englund, they just mixed this like creepiness and this silliness together so well that, to me, it just kind of cancels out everything that is scary about the character. I mean, obviously, it's like, he's in your dreams, so don't go to sleep and all that, and I get how that can be scary and disturbing, but to me, it's never been that way. It's always been like, oh, I want to watch this kind of funny movie because he's just a funny character. Insidious. I mean, yeah, you like jump scares, or I'm sorry, you don't like jump scares, then this is the movie to watch, because, well, you'll get jump scared left and right, and it will fuck with you. Friday the 13th, the original from 1980. I think what makes this one so interesting again is the twist at the end, how it's like, oh, it's been his mother the whole time, not him. Like, the whole movie, you're expecting this Jason Voorhees character to be the killer, but since you don't see the killer till the end, you realize that it's been this old lady the whole time that turns out to be his mom. You don't even see Jason until, like, the very end of the movie, right as the credits are gonna start rolling. So, again, it's that twist factor where you're like, oh, this is creepy. Okay, this kid's come back from the dead and he's killing these people, and they're like, wait, it was his mom the whole time? Like, it's just so, again, it was an interesting concept that I don't think had been done around that point in time. Like, I guess Psycho was a bit kind of similar, but that was more, the guy's mom was dead and he was like, I guess, bipolar and psycho, that he was like taking on her personality. But this was straight up just like, the mother was so upset because her son, who was like disabled, drowned because the lifeguards and shit, the people who were supposed to be watching, the kids who were swimming and whatnot, were doing the business, and she's held a grudge ever since and kills anybody that comes to Camp Crystal Lake. That is, until she dies at the end, and now it's Jason Voorhees from here on out after that. See, the original Scream, this is the one I'm talking about, because you're trying to sit through the whole movie figuring out who it is, and it's just so creepy to think that this could potentially happen in real life, where you have people in a friend group who are just so, I guess, fake and whatnot, that they want to do this kind of thing, plan out murders and just go on like a murder spree and whatnot. From what you get from it, it's Wes Craven, so not only is he making a horror film, but he's also poking fun at the genre in itself, and it, Ghostface becomes more this, creepy character, but he also has like the wits of like Freddy Krueger or Chucky. It just, like, it mixes so well together, even though it shouldn't, but it does, and it has one of the best opening kills, I think, ever, when we see Drew Barrymore get taunted and sliced up. The Shining, I guess Jack Nicholson just knows how to play creepy very well, and this one, again, it's more just some of like the elements that everybody knows, like the elevator with the blood or the twins or whatever, that kind of make it scary in itself. Other than that, to me, I don't necessarily see it as a horror film, just more of a thriller type kind of movie. Hey, I just talked about it not that long ago in the video, but we have Psycho, the original one from 1960, just a classic. Alfred Hitchcock knows how to do these kind of movies well, and I don't know, there's just something about it that's so ahead of its time, because I feel like with this movie, there was nothing made like this before. There's not a lot of kills that happen outside of, the famous shower scene kill, and I think one of the cops or something gets killed in, the movie too, but it's just so mysterious. And 1960, Alfred Hitchcock, he found a way to make it eerie and just kind of make you jump out of your seat in some areas. The Strangers is only creepy because it's a home invasion movie. Not that I think anything like this would necessarily happen. It happens, just not all the time. These are people that kind of, were stalking the house to, I guess, do the home invasion to kill these people. That line when they're like, why are you doing this? And they go, 'cause you were home. That still gets me every time. But outside of that, it's just because I think there's people that have so much fear about, even when they're in the safety of their own home, things could, go awry very quickly. And I think that's what makes this movie scary more than anything. Other than that, it's not necessarily one that's, you're going to have a lot of blood, guts, gore, anything. It's just kind of I guess, more of a scary thing, because it's like, oh shit, this could happen. Plus, I think it was based on true events, so that makes it even scarier. The Black Phone was another one too that I was hesitant on seeing because I wasn't sure what it was about, but Ethan Hawke plays this guy who just kills children. The whole thing is just disturbing. You see the bodies of the children buried under his house. You realize there's more than one house. They look similar right across the street from each other that he's using to commit these crimes. It becomes this thing, and plus the main character, the kid that he kidnaps and you see most of in the movie that ends up escaping, there's this phone, the black phone, in this room that he's kept in, and he's basically communicating with the dead kids, and they're telling him, how to get out of there, but, they say, hey, you're gonna have to take it day by day. We can't just get you out of here right away. So it's more of an intriguing, interesting movie than it is anything else. So then I asked you guys what horror movies scared you the most, and only one response happened. Hey, you know what? I guess I just need to read my audience better. But Daniel Simpson said The Human Centipede 2, to be exact. I don't really know what the difference between the first, second, and third one are. I just know that the movies in itself are disturbing. And, it's mainly because they rely more on the shock value. You got people, who are attached ass to mouth and doing all this weird shit. I've never seen those movies. I will never try to sit through those movies. I just kind of know the gist of a lot of them, reading into it. And yeah, I can see why they're disturbing. I wouldn't necessarily call it scary, just kind of disgusting. But I guess sometimes to be scary, you have to be disgusting. And now, what movie scared me the most, you might ask? Well, there's one movie. It came out in 2014, and this to me is really what I like to call the last horror film that actually scared me. Like, throughout the whole entire thing, I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And I've only seen it a couple times because of that. It legit freaks me out. And that is the movie Sinister. We talked about Ethan Hawke in The Black Phone, but here he plays, I guess you can call him the good guy of the movie. You know, he's a writer. He moves his family into this house where these brutal murders happened within a family, and he's, I guess, trying to find his writing prowess and write about it, but he keeps finding these weird tapes, and, you know, it's basically people dying. Like, there's that one scene where he's got the tape in, it's a lawnmower, and then all of a sudden you just see someone who's like tied up in the grass, and it's like freaking out, and then you can hear, can't see it, but you can hear the lawnmower running that person over, and you can just see Ethan Hawke kind of just go, like, his facial expressions, and that is what kind of freaks you out, because in your head you're kind of picturing what Ethan Hawke is seeing, and of course it's not going to be pleasant. That movie just has so much about it. It uses the shock factor, it uses the jump scares, it uses, you know, pretty much everything. It even has your so-called, I guess you can say, slasher kind of feel to it, because, you know, you got this guy who's controlling the little kids and, you know, getting them to kill their family and kind of, you know, just taking control of them and having them be his from here on out. Like, I've never seen the sequel for the sheer fact that, one, the first movie scared the shit out of me, and secondly, I just don't know if you can do it as well as you did the first time with a movie like this. And Sinister to this day will go down as probably the scariest movie that I've ever watched. And that says a lot, because I've watched a lot of disturbing horror films, but I don't know why I'm so desensitized to a lot of it. I guess because, you know, what people find scary, I just kind of find it more hilarious for some of these movies, because it's like, people know these are movies, right? Like, they're not actually real. If this was like real snuff film shit, then yeah, it would be disturbing. But when you're kind of watching a movie, you just kind of get lost in that world most of the time. And, you know, I think with every horror film, there's always something you can laugh at, like a mistake that a character makes, or a decision that they make, or just for the sheer fact that there are some really bad horror films out there that try to take themselves seriously, that, you know, are bad. But when you get a horror film that's bad and doesn't take itself seriously, then that's when you get masterpieces like Attack of the Killer Donuts. Would definitely recommend that one. That one's fucking hilarious. But yeah, that is basically it for this Halloween video of my top, or not my top 10. These were what Today thought were the 75 scariest horror movies. We didn't go through all 75. I'll link the full article in the description below so you can go take a look for yourself what the full list was. And I even gave you what I thought was my scariest movie that I've ever watched. So yeah, that's it for me. Stay safe out there, and until then, I will catch you all in the year-end list. See you, chump.